to show the public moths and learn a bit about them and see them and explore them. Not possible this year for reasons to do an event where I would have the public with me. So instead I'm doing a broadcast here on Haps and out to a bunch of other social media. And what we'll do is we will have a look here at one of the moth traps that we've got out, see what species we've got, see what there is to look at, try and identify a few as we go, make some notes, and that will hopefully give people a bit of a view on some of the things that we do. And then I've got another broadcast scheduled for later on today. It's about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, my time, which will allow us to go and have a look at a few more of the moths in a bit more detail, in a more sort of relaxed and captive setting. But for now, we'll have a look at this moth trap and see what there is to see. And here is the trap. You see it's switched off now. For anybody who was with me last night, you've seen this in operation. But essentially it's this barrel with a light on top of it that attracts the moths. They drop in and we see what there is to see. I can already see stuff getting quite active and flying away. And there are a few on the outside here. So we'll start around here, I think, with this moth, which is a ribband wave. It's form mutata of ribband wave. It hasn't got the typical form, has a dark bar, and here the bar is not filled in, which makes it mutata, commoner than the typical form, of course. And this moth here is a rather faded treble brown spot, and here we have a small fan-footed wave. What else have we got? Sitting on the crossbar here is a scarce footman, so called because it's thought that its wings resemble the uniform that a footman, a sort of household servant, used to wear. No idea if that's true or not, but that's what they think. And up here on top, not in focus unfortunately, is garden grass veneer. So we make note of the various things we've seen. I've written most of these down already. So we've got the records, that's really important. So the point of doing this in part is to record what's present, so we can share those data with people. And quite a lot of stuff active this morning and flying out, which is not ideal. Micro moth here, what was Salipa laculana. And not vast numbers in here, I must admit. Not nearly as much as I would normally expect, but we'll give it a go. The theme of National Moth Night this year is wetlands, so we're trapping here in by one of the ponds and in a bit of a reed bed. So what we got here, sitting on the egg box there, we've got a bee moth. So the larvae of this feed in the nests of bumblebees on the material in the nest. I think sometimes the bee larvae they'll take. So we will take a few specimens that we're going to look at later on. Which is remarkably difficult to do one-handed because holding a let's see what else. So down here we've got a common footman on the egg box here, about centrally now. Similar to the scarce footman we saw before. And we'll just take a few more egg boxes out, scan over them, see what there is to see. This one's always popular. So this twig mimic, or branch mimic, is a buff tip. Camouflaged itself there. Well, that's its defence. It basically looks like a bit of old broken off birch twig, and that's in part how it protects itself. From being eaten by, in effect, looking like something much less edible. So we'll hang on to one of them as well to show people later on. And again, we write down what we've seen. Now, what else have we got in here? We've got a willow beauty. It doesn't want to focus, does it? Well, willow beauty anyway. Fairly grey moth, but the cross lines, those lines converging are distinctive. And again, I'll write that down so we know what's been seen. All of these data will in due course feed into the National Moth Recording Scheme here in the UK. And allow us to know even more about what species are where and when they fly and so on. Lots of good work being done on that recording scheme, and an atlas published comparatively recently of many of the results of what's where, derived from surveys like this. There's a couple of clouded border. They're rather an attractive moth. White with this dark sort of cloudy blotchy pattern around the outside. And one of the headier species there. I'll have to identify that later. Grab one of these clouded border. I can. Go. There we go. Grab the clouded border. So we'll write those down as well. Give account of what we've seen. So here we've got a fan foot. It's another relatively common species. So again, I will write that down. This year numbers do seem generally down across the board. Most species I'm seeing fewer of. Traps are quieter than they would normally be. Just not nearly as much about, which is disappointing. A couple of moths on here. So there's a smoky wainscot sitting here. And there is on here, hidden away rather, and uncertain. Uncertain is its name rather than a description of the fact I'm not sure what it is. So again, we'll write these down. But we're really not seeing that. Now on here, there's a plume moth. Quite a small plume moth. I'm going to grab that because I don't know what that is. But you can see it's got rather odd resting posture, this species. Sitting with its wings curled up around itself. It's characteristic of the plume moths. But I didn't immediately recognise which of the species that moth was. So we will hang on to that and I will try and identify it later. It has been a very poor trap, this one. Far fewer in it than I anticipated, I have to say. Another uncertain. And another of the ones that get called uncertain. So because they're rather similar to other species, that's why they were given the vernacular name uncertain, because people were perhaps uncertain what they were when they saw them. A few more egg boxes to look at. The scalloped oak, always an attractive moth. Getting its wings ready to fly, so I'll just try and get it into a pot. So the scalloped oak. And again, I will write that down. And well, there's a few more inside, but rather difficult to see on this camera. So that was a quick zip through that trap. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to end the broadcast, and I'm going to go and do one or two of the other traps that we've got in the reserve. Go through, I'll take examples of as many species as I can grab, and we'll come back later on here on Haps at 4 o'clock my time, and we'll have a look through some of the things we caught, have a discussion of what they were, and that'll conclude the sort of series of broadcasts here for Moth Night. So thanks for joining me, those who did. It's still ridiculously early in the morning here, but this is what we do. This is what you do when you're serving with moths. You have to get up at this sort of time, and I'll work through the other traps, hang on to a few specimens, and I hope we see some of you later, and when we can